What happens when a bold reporter takes on Clint Eastwood? Spoiler, it backfires big time. When words turned sharp, Clint's legendary coolness delivered a response that left the reporter humiliated. You won't believe how it all went down. The ballroom at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel radiated timeless elegance. Crystal chandeliers glistened overhead, casting warm golden hues that danced across the polished marble floor and gold-trimmed walls. The air was thick with a heady blend of aged whiskey, expensive perfume, and the subtle undercurrent of tension that always accompanied gatherings of Hollywood's elite. Conversations ebbed and flowed, industry gossip whispered over champagne flutes, forced laughter echoing through the cavernous room. Tonight's gala was officially about raising funds for veterans' mental health initiatives. Yet, for many, it was just another chance to pose for cameras, exchange business cards, and climb the industry's social ladder. Then, Clint Eastwood walked in. No entourage, no grand announcement, just Clint, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, hands casually tucked into his pockets. At 94, his movements were slower, but there was still an unmistakable steeliness in his posture and a sharpness in his gaze. Conversations faltered mid-sentence, eyes darted toward him. Clint didn't demand respect, he commanded it simply by existing. He made his way toward the bar, greeting a few old friends with a firm handshake. He listened more than he spoke, nodding at a veteran recounting a story from Iraq, his presence making people feel heard, a rare trait in a room full of egos. Across the room, Victor Hayes watched, his jaw set with determination. Barely 30, Hayes wasn't yet a household name, but his biting political commentary had earned him a growing social media following. Tonight, he saw opportunity. To Hayes, Clint Eastwood was more than a legend, he was a relic. A symbol of an old Hollywood resistant to change. Victor wasn't interested in a conversation. He wanted a moment, his viral moment. Straightening his tie, Hayes checked his phone, ensuring the recording app was ready. His lips curled into a smirk as he imagined the headline, "Young reporter challenges Clint Eastwood and wins." He approached, each step slicing through the ambient hum of jazz and chatter. Conversations near the bar dwindled as guests instinctively edged away, sensing confrontation. Clint, engrossed in the veteran's tale, barely acknowledged him. Victor cleared his throat loudly and said, "Mr. Eastwood, Victor Hayes, the Sentinel Review. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Clint's eyes flicked toward him, a brief, unreadable glance, then returned to his conversation. The dismissal stung, but Hayes pressed on, stepping closer. "I'll be quick," he added with a forced chuckle. "I just wanted your thoughts on Hollywood's evolving landscape. You've been in this industry for over 6 decades. Do you really think people like you still have a place in it?" Hayes' words hung heavy in the air, laced with condescension. A nearby guest set his drink down a little too forcefully. Even the bartender froze mid-pour. Clint finally turned to face him, gaze calm but penetrating. It wasn't anger, it was something worse. A look that made Hayes' confidence waver. Not backing down, Hayes continued, because let's be honest, Hollywood's moving on. Old school masculinity, conservative values, they don't resonate with modern audiences anymore. His voice grew louder as he added, "Don't you think it's time for guys like you to step aside?" This was at the moment Hayes had envisioned, camera rolling, all eyes fixed on him. He could already hear the social media buzz, watch Eastwood crumble under tough questioning. Clint took a slow sip of his drink, the seconds stretching like hours. Then, with deliberate calm, he said, "You rehearsed that one, didn't you?" Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension. Hayes' jaw tightened, but he forced a smile and retorted, "I'm just asking questions people want answers to." "People?" Clint echoed, tilting his head slightly. "Or just you?" The simple question hit harder than any insult could. Hayes opened his mouth but found no immediate reply, his rehearsal line slipping away. Clint leaned on the bar, voice steady as a drawn gun. "You think the world moves forward just cause some kid with a keyboard says so?" Clint continued, eyes unwavering. "Real change doesn't happen because you wag your finger and yell, 'That's old, throw it out.'" Hayes tried to interject, but Clint didn't let him. "You don't erase the past just because you don't like it. You learn from it, build on it, fix what didn't work, and move forward." The crowd's chuckles grew louder as Clint mimicked Hayes' earlier dismissive hand wave. Hayes' cheeks flushed red, but he shot back, "With all due respect, Mr. Eastwood, it's easy for you to talk about learning from the past. You grew up in a generation that had it easier." A hush fell over the room, disapproval thick in the air. Clint chuckled a dry, humorless sound. "Easier." Clint repeated, shaking his head. "Son, I started in Hollywood when they told guys like me to change their name just to get a foot In the door. His voice deepened, each word deliberate. I laid bricks to put food on the table long before I ever saw a script. You ever shovel asphalt in July just to eat? Hayes' smirk faltered. This wasn't the narrative he had prepared for. You walked in here thinking I'd fold, Clint continued, gaze steady. That I'd get flustered, maybe storm off. He shrugged. But I don't do performances on command, that's your job. Laughter erupted around them, no longer polite but genuine. Hayes' confidence cracked further, the weight of humiliation settling over him. Desperate, Hayes blurted out, I just think people deserve better stories. Better representation, Clint. Cut him off with a calm nod. Then tell one, he said simply. Go ahead. Say something that outlasts the stories I've told or the people I've worked with. Hayes opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Silence stretched between them, suffocating and absolute. Beads of sweat glistened on Hayes' temple as the crowd's gazes bore into him. Clint took another sip of his drink, eyes never leaving Hayes'. Thought so, he muttered, voice low, but echoing like a final verdict. Someone in the crowd whispered, damn, as another guest clapped. Hayes' face burned with embarrassment, his chest tight with regret. Without another word, he turned on his heel and slipped into the crowd, his planned takedown shattered. No viral moment, no triumphant headline, just a sting of defeat. Clint watched him go. Expression unreadable. He didn't gloat, didn't smirk. Instead, he turned back to the veteran beside him. Now, he said, voice warm once more, you were telling me about Fallujah. Conversations resumed, laughter hung through the room, but the lesson lingered. Across the ballroom, a producer chuckled and muttered, Mahdi's kids really think they can outtalk Clint Eastwood. His friend shook his head, replying, they keep trying, but the outcome was always the same. In that room, under the golden glow of chandeliers, one truth echoed louder than any applause. Wisdom doesn't need to shout, it just needs to speak. If you find these stories inspiring and they motivate you to take action, please comment 9. If not, comment 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Thank you for your valuable time. Clint Eastwood, however, remained unfazed, seated at the bar, listening intently to a war veteran beside him. Victor Hayes, standing across the room, clenched his phone in his palm, still recording, still searching for the comeback that would salvage this crumbling confrontation. Moments ago, he had strutted toward Clint with the confidence of someone expecting an easy headline, a viral moment that would skyrocket his career. Instead, he found himself ensnared in the kind of verbal trap only decades of wisdom and experience could set. Easier, Clint had repeated, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had lived through far more than Victor could comprehend. I started in Hollywood when they still told actors like me to change their names because they sounded too rough, Clint continued, each word landing like a hammer on Victor's fragile bravado. I worked as a bricklayer before I ever stood in front of a camera. You think that was easier? His words lingered in the air, thick with truth and history, slicing through the polished surface of the evening. Victor's mouth opened, but no words came out of silence more deafening than any insult could be. You ever shovel asphalt in the middle of summer just to afford a meal? Clint asked, his gaze unwavering, daring Victor to answer. The young reporter blinked, caught completely off guard. He hadn't prepared for this, hadn't expected to be confronted with stories of grit and hard-earned success. Yet Clint wasn't done. He took another measured sip of his drink and leaned back. I've seen guys like you before, he said, looking for a soundbite, hoping to make a scene. Victor's confident posture sagged ever so slightly. Still, pride wouldn't let him back down. I just think people deserve better, he blurted, grasping at the remnants of his prepared narrative. Better stories. Better representation. Clint's response was swift, his voice low and steady. Then tell one. The words hit Victor like a slap, sharp, unexpected, and humiliating. The crowd, gathered around like spectators at an impromptu duel, fell into an uneasy hush. You keep talking about what people don't want, Clint pressed on. So tell them what they do. Victor's face burned under the scrutiny, his fingers clenched around his phone, but no words came. No retort. No clever comeback. Just silence. Clint's gaze never wavered, patient yet unyielding, until finally Victor's shoulders sagged under the weight of defeat. A bead of sweat trailed down his temple, betraying the confidence he tried so desperately to maintain. Thought so, Clint said, finally breaking the silence with a knowing nod. Laughter rippled through the room, not cruel, but final. The kind of laughter that acknowledged an outcome everyone had seen coming. Victor's bravado collapsed completely. His plan to expose Clint as outdated, irrelevant. It had imploded, leaving only the harsh realization that arrogance is no match for experience. He swallowed hard, the heat of humiliation spreading across his face like wildfire. He had envisioned himself leaving this exchange as the voice of a new generation, a champion for progress. Instead, he stood there a young man who had underestimated the depth of a man who had weathered storms he couldn't even imagine. Conversations resumed around them, the crowd's attention shifting back to their drinks and whispered deals, but every so often, eyes flicked back toward Victor. Some were amused, others pitying, but the worst were indifferent, because that meant he wasn't even worth remembering. Without another word, Victor turned on his heel, slipping into the crowd. No dramatic exit, no final retort. Just a man quietly retreating from a battle he had never truly understood. Clint watched him go, expression unreadable. He didn't smirk or gloat, didn't need to. He simply picked up his drink again, calm as ever. "Now," he said, turning back to the veteran beside him, "you were saying something about your time in Fallujah." The moment passed, absorbed into the evening's din, yet its weight lingered for those who had witnessed it. Nearby, a middle-aged producer chuckled, shaking his head. "You didn't have to do him like that," he said, grinning at Clint. Clint shrugged. "Didn't do anything," he replied. He walked into it himself. The producer laughed, raising his glass in silent acknowledgement. "You know they'll twist this, right? Make you out to be the villain." Clint's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. "They've been doing that for years," he said. "Doesn't change the truth." Across the room, two guests exchanged quiet words. "Man," one murmured, "these young guys really think they can outtalk Clint Eastwood." His friend chuckled. "They keep trying," he said, "and they keep failing." The night rolled on, champagne flowed, deals were made under the soft glow of candlelit tables, and the hum of Hollywood's elite filled the space once more. Yet, beneath the glamour, one lesson clung to the edges of the evening. Wisdom doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It just stands its ground, steady and enduring. Victor Hayes slipped out of the ballroom, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. His phone, still recording, now felt like dead weight in his pocket. He paused near the exit, the cool night air brushing against his flushed skin. The city lights stretched out before him, a sprawling canvas of opportunity and tonight harsh lessons. He had come seeking a headline, but all he had found was a mirror reflecting his own hubris. Back inside, Clint leaned against the bar, another guest approaching to shake his hand. Compliments were exchanged, old stories revived, but Clint's gaze remained calm, as if none of the evening's drama had touched him, because truly it hadn't. He had outlived trends, weathered criticism, and seen faces like Victor's come and go. His life wasn't measured in viral clips or fleeting outrage. It was etched in decades of hard work, perseverance, and stories that stood the test of time. Outside, Victor finally exhaled, the weight of the night settling on his shoulders. He had learned something tonight, not about Clint Eastwood, but about himself, about the difference between tearing something down and building something real. He realized that performative outrage is easy. Criticism is cheap. But creating something that lasts, that's where the real challenge lies. In the end, Clint Eastwood didn't need to prove anything. He never did. His legacy wasn't crafted in quick soundbites or shallow victories. It was forged in resilience and quietly showing up, doing the work, and letting time be the ultimate judge. And as Victor disappeared into the night, the words Clint had spoken echoed in his mind. You don't erase the past just because you don't like it. You learn from it. You build on it. There are moments in life that stay with us forever, not because of noise or drama, but because of the quiet power of wisdom and character. The encounter between Clint Eastwood and Victor Hayes wasn't just a clash of generations. It was a confrontation between wisdom forged through years of experience and the fleeting arrogance of youth. Victor walked into that ballroom aiming to take down a legend, convinced that a few sharp questions could cheat Clint's reputation. But he forgot one crucial truth. Mountains don't tremble before a breeze. Clint didn't need to raise his voice or retaliate with harsh words. His calmness and life experience spoke volumes. In that silence, everyone in the room felt an undeniable message. True class doesn't need to be proven. It radiates through how you live and how you treat others. In today's fast-paced world, attention-seeking and instant recognition seem to be the norm. People crave acknowledgement, sometimes by tearing others down. Yet Clint reminded us, attacking the past won't make you great. Learning from it and building something new is where true value lies. Indeed, destroying is easy. Building is hard. And those who stand tall through life's storms like Clint are the ones who've chosen that difficult path of resilience, perseverance, and a never-ending desire to grow. Clint's question to Victor wasn't just directed at him, it was a question for all of us. You claim others are outdated, but what have you built? Can you create something that stands the test of time like the things you criticize? That wasn't just a question, it was a wake-up call. In a world where many are quick to criticize but few are willing to act, remember this: words may catch attention, but actions build legacies. Victor entered that room believing he would be the one everyone remembered. But as he walked out, he realized that the loudest voice isn't always the one people truly hear. People listen to heart, integrity, and substance. This story reminds us that true strength isn't in tearing others down, it's in lifting, building, and inspiring. Ask yourself, who do you want to be in this story? Someone who tirelessly builds or someone who merely destroys? Someone who leaves a legacy or just another fleeting name? Life doesn't remember the critics, it honors those who dare to act, to face challenges, and to give their best. Be like Clint, quiet, unassuming, but leaving an unforgettable mark on the hearts of those around you through the values you live by.